To establish this trig identity, I'm going to mess with this side of the equation to try to end up with a 1. Usually it's in our best interest to start with the more complicated side. And for this particular identity that I'm trying to establish, I think I'll begin with one of our very useful tricks, and that's writing things in terms of sine and cosine. So let me just start with that, and we'll see if we can figure out where we're going to go next. So for the numerator, I've got a tangent plus a cotangent. Well, tangent is the same thing as sine over cosine. So I'm going to rewrite this as sine of v over cosine of v. Cotangent is the same thing as cosine over sine. So I'll start with that. Now you may be thinking, oh, cancel out sine and cosine. Remember, that only works if we're multiplying things together. These pieces are being added, so I can't cancel out anything just yet. My denominator then, I will also do the same thing. Let's rewrite those in terms of sine and cosine. So I'm going to make a big fraction bar. I've got a fraction within a fraction, this time a complex fraction. So I want to make sure I can see where the main fraction line is. Secant is the same thing as 1 over cosine. And then cosecant is the same as 1 over sine. Now these pieces on the bottom are being multiplied, but unfortunately nothing cancels, nothing's the same in the top and bottom of those red fractions. Okay, I think at this point, and if you watched one of our other videos, we talked about this trick. When you have when you're trying to establish identity and you have two fractions being added together, it's often useful to find an LCD and add those fractions together. So I suppose I'll try that next. Let's just make this into a single fraction in the numerator. So my LCD is made up of the two denominators that I see. And again, I'm just looking in the blue part, not the red part right now. So the two pieces I see are a sine and a cosine. So my LCD is sine of v times the cosine of v. And again, if you want to go back to my Algebra 2 videos, I've got some great examples to look at if you need help finding an LCD. Okay, my goal is to then turn this denominator into this denominator. And so the first blue fraction is missing the sine piece. So I'll multiply the numerator and denominator by sine. The second blue fraction is missing the cosine piece, so I'll multiply the top and bottom by cosine of v. Okay, and again, right now I'm just kind of trying to do stuff to see what happens. So let's rewrite this fraction then as I've got a sine squared, sine times sine is sine squared, of v, plus, well then I'm going to have a cosine squared of v. And hopefully right away, as soon as you see sine squared plus cosine squared, you start thinking, oh, I know what's going to happen next. That's then all over my LCD of sine v, cosine v. Again, I can't cancel anything out yet since those top pieces are still being multiplied together. So that's just the numerator of this complex fraction, but it's now a single fraction. So the denominator then, let's go ahead and multiply those. I don't need a common denominator when I multiply. So the denominator of this fraction just becomes 1 over sine of v times cosine of v. I'll make a single fraction. Okay, so here's where I'm at now. Again, it's still looking very, very far away from that 1 I'm trying to get to, but we're actually very close to getting there. So if you had said something earlier when I said, hey, hopefully sine squared plus cosine squared jumps out at you, that's good. It's a Pythagorean identity. In fact, sine squared plus cosine squared is just a 1. So I'm going to replace all that with just a 1. Some of you in class saw even from here, oh, I know why it's going to be 1. You have the same fraction divided by itself. If you're still not seeing it though, remember, when I'm dividing fractions, really I'm just multiplying by a reciprocal. And so if I want to see this even easier, let's just take that red fraction, and rather than dividing by it, let's just rewrite it as multiplying times the reciprocal. So sine of v times cosine of v over 1. And so now that I have things being multiplied together, now I'm free to cancel out anything that's the same top and bottom. Well, that sine of v, cosine, or sine v, cosine v now cancels out. And so all that's left, well, is just a 1 in the top and just a 1 in the bottom, or just 1, which was where I was trying to get to. So I've established my identity, I've gotten to my goal, there is my 1 that I was looking for.